Joe Hockey, thanks for your time. You have long sought to tar federal Labor with the brush of Eddie Obeid and Ian McDonald. They have now been found to have acted corruptly by the independent corruption watchdog. But do you really think Labor has a corruption problem more broadly?
Well, unquestionably they do. And why? Because Eddie Obeid was not just a bit player in New South Wales Labor, he was the leader of the New South Wales Right. The same New South Wales Right that put Kevin Rudd into the leadership in 2006, the same New South Wales Right that brought Kevin Rudd down, the same New South Wales Right that put Kevin Rudd back in recently.
Yeah, but he's an individual. The New South Wales Right hasn't been found guilty of corruption.
No, but the only reason why Eddie Obeid was able to exercise that power was because he was the leader of the right of the faction of the Labor Party in New South Wales. He was the leader. And Ian McDonald was saved by Anthony Albanese. That was evidence before ICAC. So when you look at the key players in this current Rudd government, Anthony Albanese, Chris Bowen, New South Wales Right, Tony Burke, New South Wales Right, Bob Carr actually defended and promoted Eddie Obeid, then you can see that state Labor and federal Labor are fingers on the same hand.
But there's no evidence that those people you name there have done anything wrong, or much less knew that Eddie Obeid was doing anything wrong.
Well, then what they should do is now's the time for Kevin Rudd and all of his team to come clean on the relationship they had with Eddie Obeid and Ian McDonald. It should not be something that
they've all denied saying they knew anything about this.
No, okay, but what was the relationship that they had with Eddie Obeid and Ian McDonald? What did Eddie Obeid ever do
What do you suspect?
for Kevin Rudd?
What do you suspect there? There were favours from Eddie Obeid in return for something?
I suspect that Kevin Rudd could not have become the leader of the Labor Party in 2006-7 without the support of the New South Wales Right led by Eddie Obeid. There's no doubt about that. It's documented now. And the question is, now he's got a candidate in Kingsford Smith who met with Eddie Obeid on a monthly basis. That's Kevin Rudd's candidate. Kevin Rudd has Sam Dastyari conducting an investigation into the New South Wales Labor Party. Sam Dastyari is the poacher who is now expected to become the zookeeper.
Hang on, what's Sam Dastyari done wrong?
Well, Sam Dastyari is a key advocate for the New South Wales Labor Party. He has been part of the long line, the conga line of state secretaries of the Labor Party who Eddie Obeid had some influence over. And it goes back, to Mark Arbib and a range of others.
There's no evidence they've done anything wrong.
Well, then, no problem. The Prime Minister and others should fully explain all the details of their experiences and relationships with Eddie Obeid.
Because the Prime Minister has appointed essentially federal administrators over the New South Wales.
No, he's appointed Sam Dastyari.
Well,
come on.
He's appointed the national exexecutive to run the New South Wales ALP.
And who's doing it?
What exactly do you want him to do?
I want the Prime Minister.
How many meetings there were with Eddie Obeid?
When the meetings were. Did Eddie Obeid offer any support for Kevin Rudd to become the leader of the Labor Party originally? What is the relationship between Tony Burke, Chris Bowen and Eddie Obeid? Is it the case that Anthony Albanese's saving of Ian McDonald's career was simply, a mate helping out a mate? Or can he unequivocally state that there was no relationship between Ian McDonald and himself that would have in any way impugned his capacity as a minister?
Let's move on. The Prime Minister seems to be preparing the ground for an increase in tobacco excises. He today talked about the number of people affected by cancer and 30% of them being afflicted through smoking-related cancers. Would you support any increase in tobacco tax?
Well, you shouldn't have to do it. It's not... Look, Kevin Rudd dresses these things up as health initiatives, but they're not. You know that, I know that. Everyday Australians know that. He did that with the Alco Pops tax, you remember? And he said it was all about health, and it failed. It raised money, but it failed from a health perspective.
Would you support it?
Well, we can't form an opinion because we don't know what the state of the budget is.
Do you have an opinion, though, on whether current tobacco excises are about right?
I can't form an opinion on the state of the budget. And where tax increases have to be.
So things are really bad.
But I don't like the idea.
You may support this. If things are really bad
I'm not going to have you put words in my mouth. From my perspective, why does Kevin Rudd always have to hit the people with higher taxes when he runs out of money? Why is that the case? And that is because he doesn't control spending. And you know, the fact is, when you increase tobacco taxes, it's not going to harm someone on $80,000, $100,000, $200,000 a year. It hurts someone on $40,000 a year, or pensioners. They're the people that have to pay the higher tax. And what Kevin Rudd's saying, it's all about health. Well, it's not. It's about Kevin Rudd running out of money.
On your own policies, can you just clear up, will you submit your policies to Treasury?
No. We said we're not going to do that.
And why not?
Well, because the process is that the policies have to go to the Prime Minister's office, and then the Prime Minister's office gives them to the Treasury. And what we saw when Labor was in opposition, and ourselves, Treasury at the end of the day couldn't complete all the analysis in time before the election. From our perspective, we're using now the Parliamentary Budget Office. We've sent more than 200...
For all of your policies?
Oh, we've sent them all. We're sending them all.
And you will send those still to come?
Well, yeah. Well, within reason, yeah. But because
what does that mean, within reason?
Because the Parliamentary Budget Office only has the numbers at a federal level. So, for example, when the Labor Party announced computers in schools as its policy in 2007, if it had have consulted with the states about how many schools there are, about exactly what the needs were of teachers in classrooms to provide computer studies, then they wouldn't have made such a massive financial mistake in claiming that computers in schools would cost $1 billion when in fact it cost $2.2 billion.
Okay, so you put everything into the Parliamentary Budget Office.
No, well, hang on. This is why when you develop policy, you should consult with all the stakeholders about the costs, about the inputs, about the numbers, and not rely on just one source. Now, we endeavour to get information out of Treasury and modelling out of Treasury. They won't even release basic modelling on some of the key policies of the government.
On the overall budget and economic update that's due, the PFO figures, the pre-election fiscal outlook figures due 10 days into the campaign, will you rely on those? Will you trust those?
Well, the starting point has to be, David, to see whether they're robust, whether they're fair income. Now, I don't want to gloat about having been right for the last 6 years in a row, but let me have a go. You know, after the last budget, I said the terms of trade just didn't seem quite right. The growth figure didn't seem quite right. I said that the mining tax number was wrong. The carbon tax number was wrong, and they hadn't properly budgeted for the cost of asylum seekers. And you know what? I've actually been proven right already. I thought it would take a few months, but it's actually taken just 2.
And who do you blame for that? Do you think Labor's actually influencing Treasury?
Well, it is the government's document. It is the government's document.
But we're meant to have an independent Treasury.
Well, we are, for the purposes of PFO, but now the government is releasing a new number to try and bully the Treasury's release of PFO.
And you think Treasury can be bullied?
Well, we'll find out.
Surely you mustn't have much trust in Martin Parkinson, the head of Treasury, if you think he can be bullied.
I'm not giving a character reference on any individuals.
But you think he can be bullied?
Well, I don't know. My starting point is every number that has come out of the government for the last 6 years has been wrong. So I'm not going to cop any lecture from Labor about accuracy of numbers. My numbers are right, and I've been right all along, and Labor has been wrong on every single occasion that we've made the allegation. And that's because we consult with industry, we consult with business, we consult with stakeholders. They give us the feedback. And what they're all saying now, rather emphatically, David, is the government has got it wrong. I'll give you one more example. The FBT that the government announced the other day, everything the government announced was just completely wrong. The demographic affected, wrong. The cars affected, wrong. The income of people who were going to be affected, wrong. And then the Treasury and the Australian Taxation Office were ringing up the industry 3 days after the announcement by Kevin Rudd and Chris Bowen, asking them how novated leases work. Can you believe that? After the announcement. So ask me again how you know, where do we start as a matter of trust?
Just finally, on the Business Council of Australia, they've put out a 9-point plan today, a 10-year agenda. There are a number of ideas that you already have in your policy, things like an audit of spending, a review of IR policies, but on a few others, I just want to go through, see what you think quickly. On tax, a cut in the company tax rate to funded by an increase in the GST?
Well, we're not increasing the GST. We've said that.
Okay. What about
but we have already said we're going to have a review of the tax system, and that review will
But not
feed
the
into.
GST.
Well, no, we didn't say that. We said we'll have a review of the tax system, a proper review of the tax system, and whatever comes out of that review, we will take to the Australian people at a subsequent election for their endorsement.
So if there is to be an increase, it wouldn't be until another election.
It would be only after there had been consultation and the approval of the Australian people for that tax change. But I do make the point, and I know it, with Britain going to a 23% company tax rate, it is one of the areas where there will be pressure.
All right, and they also say distribute GST on a per capita basis amongst the states.
Well, you have the Grants Commission that has worked through that formula. If any of the states want to change the Grants Commission formula, they're entitled to put it forward. But the pot of the GST is there. How it is divided is up to the Grants Commission, and if one of the premiers wants to have it reviewed again, they're entitled to have it.
And the final one, lifting the threshold on foreign investment reviews to just over $1 billion. What do you think of that idea?
No, we're not going to be party to that. We will release our foreign investment policy.
You're actually going to reduce
election.
it, aren't you?
Well, no, what we've said is we're going to have greater scrutiny and we're going to have a proper register of foreign interests, in particularly agricultural land in Australia and agricultural investment. I think transparency is a key in relation to foreign investment. Obviously, in relation to the United States and the Free Trade Agreement, the threshold's much higher than it is for everyone else. But
when it comes to China and state-owned enterprises...
Well, there's no change. The review is at zero for state-owned enterprises, and it shouldn't change.
Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey, thank you.
Thanks very much, David.